completely burning out at work isn't actually because you have too much to do.
Right.
Like, what if it's because your manager keeps treating you like this frontline warrior when your underlying psychological wiring clearly dictates that you're a highly specialized mage?
That is such a perfect way to frame it.
I mean, think about that for a second. We spend hours customizing digital avatars in video games.
Oh, absolutely. Meticulously.
Yeah, we balance their strength, their intelligence, their stamina. We optimize how they navigate this fictional world. And if you build a character with, say, really low physical defense, but massive magical power, you don't send them charging into the middle of a sword fight.
Because they just get crushed immediately.
Exactly, you'd get crushed. But in the real world, like in our actual careers and relationships, we do this to ourselves and our teams every single day.
We really do.
We totally ignore our actual stats, charge into the wrong battles, and then we just wonder why we feel so exhausted.
It's actually a remarkable blind spot in modern professional life because we're incredibly rigorous about optimizing our software, right? Or our supply chains, our financial portfolios.
Well, everything external is tracked to the absolute minute.
Exactly. But then when it comes to the single most complex system we actually operate, which is, our own psychological architecture, we often just guess.
We just completely wing it.
We do. We rely on this vague sense of intuition, or even worse, we try to force ourselves into a mold that fundamentally contradicts our inherent wiring.
Like trying to fit a square peg in a round hole, but with human brains.
Yeah, I mean, we expect a deep-thinking, highly sensitive strategist to somehow thrive in a chaotic, noisy, open-plan sales floor, and then we have the nerve to label them as underperforming when their nervous system just inevitably crashes.
It's so unfair.
Yeah.
And I know you, listening to this deep dive right now, the learner, you're probably juggling a dozen different roles.
Or at least it does.
Right. You're seeking self-improvement. You want to be a better leader, a more empathetic colleague, a more present partner. But if you're anything like me, you look out at the whole landscape of professional development and you're just overwhelmed.
The sheer volume of it is staggering.
It's an avalanche.
Yeah.
There's this massive avalanche of personality tests and leadership theories and, self-help gurus yelling at you on LinkedIn.
And half of them are completely contradictory.
Exactly. You take some BuzzFeed-style quiz that tells you your leadership style is, I don't know, a golden retriever.
Right, which is cute, but...
But then you're supposed to somehow translate being a golden retriever into managing a complex supply chain crisis. It's just too much noise. And very little of it is actually actionable.
Which is precisely why the stack of sources we're diving into today is so incredibly compelling.
Yeah, I was blown away by this material.
Because we are looking at a highly structured, comprehensive collection of mentoring frameworks and diagnostic methodologies developed by Stephen A. Davis. And this isn't about slapping some fun, vague label on your forehead. Davis has essentially synthesized decades of psychological profiling, modern leadership theory, and systemic coaching into this multi-tiered architecture.
And the focus here is strictly on methods and questionnaires in mentoring specifically for personality development, right?
Exactly. And the whole thing culminates in something called the persona stack brief.
The personality avatar.
Yes, the personality avatar.
The character sheet for real life. I love that concept so much. And we're not just stopping at the human element today either, because the sources take this fully developed methodology and inject it into the future with this fascinating AI mentoring system called Oren.
Which is a whole wild conversation on its own.
Oh, we are definitely getting into that. But before we get to building an avatar or, talking to an AI, we really need to establish the ground rules here. Because the word mentoring gets thrown around constantly in corporate spaces.
It's become a total buzzword.
It really has.
Yeah.
People use it to describe everything from intensive career coaching to just having coffee with a senior VP once a quarter and chatting about golf.
Right.
So how does this specific systemic framework actually define what mentoring is?
Well, it draws a very hard, very necessary boundary right at the onset. In this framework, mentoring is defined strictly as a voluntary, process-oriented advisory form.
Voluntary being the key word there, I imagine.
Absolutely. You can't force someone into a mirror. And its primary objective is to improve a person's capacity to act their agency, really through rigorous self-reflection and personal responsibility.
Okay, that makes sense.
But what's equally important, maybe even more important, is what the text explicitly states mentoring is not. There is a massive, uncompromising distinction made here. Mentoring is not therapy.
Right, that's a huge distinction. It's not there to heal deep-seated childhood trauma or replace medical treatment.
Exactly. The mentor, in this systemic context, is not a healer. They are a facilitator of professional and personal clarity.
Facilitator, right.
Yeah. They help the mentee reflect on their decisions, understand their behavioral patterns, map out future strategies. But the mentee must be psychologically stable enough to actually undertake that journey.
Which we'll get into with the baseline checks later.
We will. And interestingly, when we look at who is actually doing this mentoring, the source material, specifically, there's this text titled Agility of Tomorrow. It just completely blows up the traditional stereotype.
You're talking about the shift away from the wise old sage model, right?
Exactly.
Because for decades, mentoring was strictly unidirectional. It was the 60-year-old executive imparting their vast institutional wisdom to the 25-year-old novice.
The classic top-down approach.
Yeah. But the text argues that in an agile, tech-driven environment, that one-way street is actually becoming a massive liability.
It is a huge liability, and it's because of a phenomenon the text refers to as tech suction.
Okay, let's pause on that term because it's such a great visual.
Yeah,
tech suction.
It really is.
It's like gravity, right? The market is demanding digital fluency, your competitors are adopting new software, and it creates this massive vacuum that just pulls the whole organization forward, whether the leadership is actually ready for it or not.
That's a perfect way to conceptualize it. The technology is just dragging the company into the future. But the older executives, who possess all this invaluable contextual knowledge and industry wisdom, they're often the ones resisting the pull.
Just because they don't understand the new digital tools.
Simply because of that, yes. The text actually provides a fascinating case study of a mid-sized manufacturing company in Austria to illustrate this.
Oh, right. The one that was completely paralyzed trying to implement a new digital production technology.
Exactly. So you have a situation where the 22-year-old apprentices and the young engineers, they understand the new digital dashboard perfectly.
I mean, they grew up with that UX design language. It's native to them.
Right. But they don't necessarily know what a misfiring compressor actually sounds like on the factory floor.
They lack the contextual wisdom.
Exactly. Meanwhile, the 55-year-old plant manager knows the sound of every single machine in that building.
Yeah.
But he's terrified of the iPad dashboard.
And he's probably subconsciously blocking the rollout so he doesn't look incompetent in front of his team.
Precisely. The institutional knowledge and the digital fluency were completely siloed across generational lines. So the company implemented reverse mentoring.
Which is such a brilliant flip of the script.
It is. They deliberately selected 25 employees between the ages of 20 and 30 to specifically mentor the older executives on the new technology.
That is brilliant, but honestly, it sounds like a total ego minefield.
Oh, without a doubt.
Like having a 25-year-old tell a 30-year veteran how to do their job requires a totally different kind of leadership posture from everyone involved.
It absolutely does, which is why the text warns that modern leadership has to actively balance this dynamic. You cannot let the obsession with new digital tools entirely overshadow the rich, lived experience of the older staff.
Right, it's not about throwing the baby out with the bathwater.
No. The goal isn't to replace the old guard, it's to create a reciprocal loop. The young teach the digital how, and the older staff teach the strategic why.
I love that, the how and the why.
Yeah.
But for any of this to work, whether it's reverse mentoring or traditional mentoring or even just peer-to-peer, the person guiding the process has to adopt a very specific stance, right?
Yes, a very deliberate stance.
So if the mentor isn't just handing down stone tablets of wisdom and they aren't acting as a therapist, what is their actual operational posture? The sources outline this through something called the ACR Kreislauf, or the ACR cycle.
Yes, the ACR cycle.
And this seems to be like the ethical and methodological foundation for everything Davis builds later.
It is the absolute bedrock. The ACR cycle rests on 3 distinct pillars.
Okay, let's break them down.
The first is the work principle, the word principle. At its core, this is just about honest, unvarnished connection.
Meaning what exactly in a corporate setting?
It's the creation of a space where the mentor and mentee connect authentically without any judgment or, corporate doublespeak.
Okay, so you establish an honest connection. That sounds nice. But connection without accountability is just, well, a nice chat over coffee.
Exactly.
Does Davis have a mechanism to force the mentee to actually do something with that connection?
Yes, and that brings us to the second pillar, which is the consequences compass, or the consequences compass.
I like the sound of that.
It's arguably the most challenging part of the stance. The mentor must encourage the mentee to take absolute, unflinching responsibility for their thoughts, their feelings, and their actions. It is a zero-blame environment.
Zero blame. I mean, that is incredibly hard in a corporate setting where shifting blame is practically an Olympic sport.
Oh, it's the default mode for a lot of organizations. But it's the only way to build true agency. The mentor guides the mentee to look at the available alternatives, make a deliberate choice, and then consciously bear the consequences of that choice.
Without pointing fingers at the market, or the boss, or the algorithm.
Exactly. You own the outcome.
So you have honest connection, and you have radical ownership of consequences. What's the third pillar that completes the cycle?
The third is the Einflussformel, the influence formula.
Okay.
This introduces the systemic thinking element. It requires the mentee to stop looking at themselves in a vacuum.
Because no one operates in a vacuum.
Right. You are part of a system, your team, your entire organization, your family unit. The mentor helps the mentee understand how their specific behaviors ripple out and impact that broader system.
Allowing them to use their influence purposefully rather than just, accidentally blowing things up.
Precisely.
As you lay out these three pillars, connecting honestly, forcing them to own their consequences, and making them look at how they affect the system, it really crystallizes something for me about this whole approach.
What's that?
The mentor in this framework is absolutely not a mechanic.
Yes.
You don't take your broken career to a mentor, pop the hood, and say, hey, fix it. The mentor is just a mirror.
That is the perfect analogy.
They're just holding up this highly polished glass and saying, look, here's what you were doing. Here's the impact it's having on the system. Now, what are you going to do about it?
That captures the essence perfectly. The mentor provides the structure, they provide the psychological safety, and they provide the reflective surface, but they explicitly do not solve the problem.
Right.
In fact, the source text has this fantastic definitive quote on this. It says, "I do not make decisions for mentees. Rather, I accompany them on their path to their own decision."
I love the philosophy of that, but I have to push back a little on the reality of implementing it.
Fair enough. Go ahead.
Because looking in a mirror, especially a really clear one that shows all your professional flaws and your bad habits and the ways you negatively impact your team, that is deeply uncomfortable.
Oh, it's agonizing for some people.
Right. People naturally want to look away or they want to blame the mirror. So if you aren't fixing their problems, if you aren't handing them a magic checklist to make the pain go away, how do you build enough trust to make them stare into that mirror in the first place?
That is the pivotal challenge of all coaching and mentoring. If there is no trust, the mentee will just give you socially desirable answers.
They'll just tell you what they think you want to hear to get out of the room.
Exactly. And to solve this, the source material integrates the work of trust expert Eva Schulte-Osstum, specifically her Vertrouwens code, or trust code.
Okay, the trust code.
She identifies 9 granular behaviors that a mentor must exhibit to build that necessary psychological safety.
I think we really need to dig into these. Because trust is one of those words that corporations use constantly, but they rarely define it.
It's usually just a poster on the wall.
Right. We say, oh, we need more trust on this team, but no one actually knows what lever to pull to make that happen. So what are the actual mechanics of trust, according to this code?
Let's examine a few of the most critical ones, starting with discretion or Verschwiegenheit.
Okay.
This sounds obvious, but it is frequently violated. Discretion means you are an absolute vault.
Meaning no gossiping at the water cooler.
None. If a mentee shares a fear about their competency or a frustration with a colleague, that information stops with you. The moment a mentor gossips or even casually references a private conversation in a public setting, the mirror shatters.
That makes total sense. If the mirror is leaking my private information to my boss, I'm never standing in front of it again.
Exactly.
What's another mechanic?
Honesty or Ehrlichkeit. But in this context, it's not just about not lying. It is the willingness to tell the truth even when it creates extreme discomfort.
Like giving really tough feedback.
Yes. And crucially, it also involves the mentor admitting their own mistakes freely.
Oh, that's interesting.
Because if the mentor presents themselves as this flawless, untouchable guru, it creates an intimidating hierarchy. By admitting fault, the mentor signals that it is safe for the mentee to be imperfect.
It humanizes the process. And that actually ties right into another one on our list, right? Transparency.
Yeah, yes, transparency is vital. It means clarifying expectations right out of the gate.
So no secret tests.
No hidden agendas, no secret evaluations happening behind the mentee's back. You explain exactly why you are asking a question or using a specific framework. It removes the anxiety of the unknown.
I see how these stack on top of each other. Discretion makes it safe to speak. Honesty makes it real. Transparency removes the paranoia. Are there any behaviors on the list that are more about action rather than just communication?
Absolutely. Reliability or reliability, it is purely behavioral.
Meaning just showing up.
It's the mundane, unglamorous act of doing exactly what you said you would do consistently over a long period of time.
Right.
If you say the session is an hour, it's an hour. If you promise to send a resource on Tuesday, you send it on Tuesday. This consistency creates predictability, and the human nervous system needs predictability to relax enough to reflect.
That is such a good point about the nervous system needing predictability.
It really does. And finally, I would highlight sincerity, Aufrichtigkeit.
Wait, how does sincerity differ from honesty? They sound like the same thing.
They're close, but honesty is telling the truth about a fact. Sincerity is sticking to your core principles even when it costs you something.
Ah. Wow.
It means the mentor doesn't suddenly change their ethical stance just because the CEO walks into the room. It shows the mentee that you have a solid foundation, which makes you a stable anchor for them when they are navigating their own chaos.
So, by rigorously practicing these behaviors, the mentor constructs a fortress of trust.
A fortress, yes.
It's a secure container where the mentee finally feels safe enough to stop performing, drop the corporate mask, and actually look at the real data of who they are.
Exactly. The trust container is the absolute prerequisite. But once that container is secure, you need a structured method to gather that data.
Right, because you can't just sit in a room and ask, so tell me about yourself.
It's way too vague.
Everyone freezes when they hear that question.
They do. You need a systematic approach to define the who. And this brings us to the centerpiece, really the ultimate deliverable of Davis's entire methodology.
Okay, here we go. The persona step brief.
The personality avatar.
The personality avatar.
The driving question of the whole process is profound, the simple. Who am I? But Davis doesn't answer it with a single flat label.
Right.
He doesn't just say, oh, you are an extrovert, good luck. He synthesizes data from multiple scientifically validated questionnaires to build a comprehensive, multidimensional profile.
And this goes right back to our RPG character sheet analogy from the intro.
It does.
I just love the gamification inherent in this concept. When you play a complex role-playing game, your character sheet doesn't just list one thing. It lists your core attributes, strength, dexterity, intelligence. It lists your acquired skills, your passive resistances, your vulnerabilities, and your alignment.
Everything you need to know to play the game effectively.
Exactly. And knowing those stats dictates your entire strategy. If you ignore your stats, you fail the mission.
You're going to have a very bad time.
Right. If I know I'm playing a character with incredible stealth but terrible armor, I don't kick the front door down. I sneak through the window.
Yeah.
But in our careers, we rarely have a document that clearly outlines our professional stealth versus our professional armor.
We just guess.
Yeah. But the avatar is that document. It dictates how you work best, how you should lead a team, and how you actually need to be communicated with.
And the source material provides a brilliant, highly specific visual example of what a completed avatar actually looks like.
Oh, I loved this part.
They created a fictional mentee named Rainer Zufall.
Which, for anyone who doesn't speak German, translates to pure coincidence.
A little dry Austrian humor injected into the methodology.
You gotta love it. So what is actually on Rainer's character sheet?
It is remarkably concise. It's designed to be an elevator pitch of his persona. It doesn't read like a dense academic psychological evaluation. It reads like an operating manual.
Okay.
It starts with his core motto, manage it together.
Okay, so that immediately signals a collaborative rather than an autocratic baseline.
Exactly. Then it uses symbolic association. It asks Rainer to identify with an animal.
And symbolic association is so powerful because it bypasses corporate jargon.
Yeah.
You get a much truer sense of a person when you ask for a metaphor than when you ask them to pick from a list of corporate buzzwords. So what animal did Rainer choose?
He chose Kerberos.
The mythological three-headed dog that guards the underworld.
The very same.
Okay, that is fascinating because if someone tells me their animal is a golden retriever, I immediately know they want to be liked. They're people pleasers.
Right.
But if they say Kerberos, that tells me they are fiercely protective of their domain. They're always watching. Maybe they're a bit intense, but they are incredibly loyal to the boundaries they've set.
See, it speaks volumes before you even look at a single data point.
It really does.
And the avatar also asks for a fictional or film character for further association. Rainer chose Morpheus from The Matrix.
Oh, man. That is so telling.
Right.
So he views himself as the ultimate guide. I mean, Morpheus doesn't fight Neo's battles for him. He offers the red pill, he shows him the brutal truth of reality, but he forces Neo to walk the path himself.
Which ties directly back to our discussion about the mentor being a mirror.
Exactly. Rayner sees himself as a mirror for his own team. He's not going to do the work for you, but he'll show you the way.
He does. But the avatar doesn't just rely on symbols, it also gets highly tactical. It explicitly lists his preferred working conditions and his critical pain points.
Okay, what's Rayner's pain point?
Rayner notes that he thrives on gathering massive amounts of information and gaining a macro overview through deep, uninterrupted focus.
Makes sense.
But his absolute kryptonite, his major pain point listed right on the avatar, is Störungen jeder Art interruptions of any kind.
And this is where the avatar goes from being just a fun thought experiment to an essential operational tool.
Absolutely.
Because if I am Rayner's manager or I'm on a cross-functional team with him and I have access to this avatar, it changes everything about how we interact.
It removes all the guesswork.
Right. I immediately know, do not pop by his desk unannounced for a casual quick question when he's deep in a spreadsheet.
Do not do it.
Do not send him a barrage of fragmented Slack messages. Because if I do that, I'm going to trigger the three-headed dog.
You're going to get bitten.
Yeah. I need to schedule a specific time, bring all my data, and let him process it.
And that is the true purpose of the Persona Spec Brief. It is not a diagnostic label forced upon the mentee by some outside authority. It serves as the ultimate objective conversation starter.
A conversation starter.
Yes. The mentor compiles all the data, presents this avatar, and asks, does this accurately reflect your lived experience? Do you recognize yourself here?
And if they agree.
Once it's validated, it becomes a tool to visualize requirements and communicate working styles to the broader organization, which drastically reduces interpersonal friction.
But this raises a massive question. How do you actually generate the underlying stats for this character sheet? Because you can't just guess. You can't just take one of those online quizzes to find out which type of sourdough bread you are and then base your entire career on it.
Right. No, it requires real data.
Exactly.
It requires immense rigor. And this is where Davis's methodology is truly brilliant. Because it doesn't just hand you a massive 500-question psychological battery on day one and say, have fun.
Thank goodness.
It relies on a multi-level diagnostic process, starting from the absolute surface and slowly drilling down. It begins at level 0.
The full 0. The baseline and onboarding. Now, why do we start at 0 instead of 1? What are we actually looking for before we even begin the real profiling?
Well, before diving into deep structural psychology, the mentor has to check the mentee's current operating system.
Okay.
You have to ask, is this human system currently stable enough to even run a diagnostic? If someone's engine is on fire, you don't test their top speed, you put out the fire.
That's a great point.
Level 0 utilizes 2 primary tools to check this baseline. The first is the balance model, which was developed by Dr. Nosrath Peseshkian.
Actually, not super familiar with Peseshkian's model. How does that one work?
It's a holistic approach to self and time management that divides a person's energy allocation into 4 core areas: body and health, achievement and work, contact and relationships, and future, meaning, or fantasy.
Okay, 4 buckets of energy.
Exactly. And the goal isn't necessarily a perfect 25% split across all 4. I mean, that's unrealistic for most people.
Right. Life ebbs and flows.
But rather, it's used to identify severe chronic imbalances. If a mentee is pouring 80% of their energy into achievement and work and absolutely 0% into body or meaning, the system is fundamentally brittle.
It's like checking the structural integrity of the bridge before you drive a freight train of psychological analysis over it.
That's exactly what it is. And the second part of level 0 is a direct, unflinching burnout and bore-out check. Yes. It assesses the mentee's current state of well-being and energy depletion. Are they dangerously exhausted from chronic stress? Or, and this is equally important, are they dangerously understimulated?
I am so glad the framework includes bore-out. We talk endlessly about burnout in corporate culture, but bore-out is an absolute soul killer.
It really is.
It destroys your engagement, your self-worth, your professional momentum, but it hides behind the appearance of just, having an easy job.
It is incredibly insidious. And from a diagnostic perspective, it's vital because if someone is in the depths of bore-out, they might test as highly apathetic or lacking in conscientiousness. But that isn't their core personality. It's a symptom of their current environment.
Right. If you're bored out of your mind, you're not going to look conscientious on a test.
Exactly. That's why level 0 is mandatory. Now, once we confirm the baseline is stable, we move to level 1, which the texts categorize as overview and organization.
So if level 0 ensures the system's actually running, level 1 looks at how the system interfaces with the daily world, like the daily mechanics of working.
Correct. This is the first layer of the personality profile, and it utilizes several specific questionnaires. First, we look at time management types, which is based on the work of Dr. Marco von Munchausen.
Okay.
This categorizes individuals into 4 distinct approaches to time: efficient, reliable, spontaneous, or emotional.
Let's ground that a bit. What does that actually look like in a modern office?
Well, an efficient type is obsessed with optimization. They love spreadsheets, they time block their calendar to the minute, and they view a 5-minute meeting delay as a moral failing.
We all know that person.
We do. A spontaneous type, however, feels completely suffocated by that structure. They thrive on adrenaline, and they often produce their best, most creative work right before a deadline when the pressure forces focus.
And if you put an efficient manager in charge of a spontaneous creative director without them understanding these types, they will absolutely destroy each other.
It's a recipe for disaster.
The manager will think the creative is lazy and undisciplined, and the creative will think the manager is a micromanaging tyrant.
Precisely. Next, in level 1, the mentor assesses learning types.
Okay, how we take in information.
Right. How does the mentee actually ingest and process things? Are they auditory? They need to hear it discussed. Visual, they need to see the flow chart. Kinesthetic or motor, they need to physically interact with the concept. Or communicative, they learn through debating it with others.
And again, this is so crucial for the avatar.
Absolutely.
Because if my avatar says I'm a visual learner and you try to onboard me by talking at me for 3 hours without a single slide or diagram, I am going to retain nothing.
0.
Not because I'm unintelligent, but because the delivery mechanism completely missed my receiver.
Exactly. And finally, level 1 concludes with a comprehensive resilience check. Now, this is not just some vague measure of toughness.
Right.
It maps the mentee's need for stability, categorized as resilient, prudent, or sensitive, against their level of extroversion introverted, ambiverted, or extroverted. It measures incredibly granular trait expressions.
The text actually lists a whole bunch of these expressions.
Yeah.
Sensibility, temperament, attitude. What stands out to you as the most critical one for a modern workplace?
Regeneration time.
Ooh, yes.
This is a massive insight. Some people can have a highly contentious, emotionally draining 2-hour strategy debate, take a 5-minute coffee break, and be completely ready for the next meeting.
They just bounce right back.
They have a very short regeneration time. Others might need a full 24 hours of quiet, solitary focus to let their nervous system recalibrate after that exact same meeting.
And neither is wrong.
Neither is wrong.
But if the person who needs 24 hours of regeneration is scheduled for back-to-back brainstorming sessions all week, their performance will fall off a cliff.
Guaranteed.
Not because they lack the skill, but because their battery just didn't have time to recharge.
That is the exact insight level 1 provides. It maps the daily interface.
Okay, but I have a structural question about this entire sequencing. Sure. Why do we spend so much time on level 0 and level 1? Like, why are we painstakingly checking time management styles and regeneration times before we dive into the really juicy, deep psychological profiling?
It's a fair question.
If the ultimate goal is to know who they fundamentally are, why start with how they manage their calendar? Feels a bit like, I don't know, looking at the paint color before checking the foundation of a house.
It's an excellent question, and it speaks to the core philosophy of systemic methodology. Most of our listeners know the Big Five and DeC, right?
Right, they're pretty standard.
But what's fascinating here isn't just the tests themselves, it's the order in which Davis deploys them. You cannot accurately assess a person's true, enduring psychological architecture if their system is currently crashing.
Because the crash distorts the data.
Completely. Imagine you give a deep psychological assessment to a mentee who is actively burning out and whose daily organization is in absolute chaos. They are going to test as highly neurotic, deeply reactive, and highly disorganized. But that isn't their true character. That is just the data of a nervous system under extreme threat.
Ah, I see. So if you test me while I'm exhausted, overwhelmed, and feeling like I'm failing at my job, I'm going to look like a completely different person on paper than if you test me when I'm rested, engaged, and in control of my workflow.
Exactly. You would be measuring the temperature of the fire, not the architecture of the house.
Wow.
You must stabilize the baseline level 0 and understand how they process daily friction level 1 before you can ever accurately ask why they do what they do.
That makes perfect sense. Okay, so we've stabilized the mentee. We know how they manage their time and how they learn. Now, the methodology descends into the core. We enter level 2, recognizing and accompanying.
This is where we look under the floorboards.
Let's look under the floorboards.
This is where we bring in the heavy hitters of psychological frameworks. Level 2 maps the mentee's core cognitive and behavioral wiring. Davis utilizes 3 major scientifically backed models and blends them to build this foundational layer of the avatar.
Let's break these down because while many people might know the names, they don't always know how they fit together. What is the first framework?
The foundation is the ocean model, which is commonly known as the Big Five.
Okay.
The methodology specifically uses Dr. Satow's adapted short version of this, and the Big Five is widely considered by psychologists to be the most scientifically robust and reliable model of personality we have.
And it measures 5 basic dimensions, right? Openness to experience, conscientiousness, extroversion, agreeableness, and neuroticism.
Yes. And it's important to remember these aren't really types, they are spectrums.
Right, you aren't just conscientious or not conscientious. You fall somewhere on a percentile curve compared to the rest of the population.
Exactly. It maps your biological and psychological default settings. If you score in the 90th percentile for neuroticism, it means your baseline sensitivity to negative emotion and stress is inherently higher than most people.
Which you can't just wish away.
You cannot. You have to design your avatar around it.
Okay, so the Big Five is the bedrock. What's the second framework in level 2?
The DISC model, which is based on the early 20th century work of psychologist William Moulton Marston,
Okay.
where the Big Five looks at internal wiring, DISC looks at external behavioral styles, particularly in a work or conflict environment. It categorizes behavior into dominance, influence, steadiness, and conscientiousness.
This one is incredibly popular at corporate training. I've taken it like 3 times.
Most people have, yeah.
It tells you if you are the kind of person who drives for immediate results, dominance, or tries to persuade and energize others, influence, or if you seek harmony and consistent execution steadiness, or demand accuracy and analytical logic conscientiousness.
Yes, it maps how you predictably act and communicate, especially under pressure. And then we add the third and perhaps most revealing framework, the Rice motivation profile, or Lebensmotiv, life motives.
How does race differ from Big Five and DISC?
It goes deeper than behavior and deeper than personality traits. It actually looks at what truly drives the individual. What are the intrinsic needs that must be satisfied for this person to feel fulfilled?
Okay.
Rice identified 16 basic desires, things like power, independence, curiosity, acceptance, order, social contact, and even vengeance or vindication.
And the source text notes a very specific scoring mechanism for this, right? It uses a scale from -1.5 to +1.5.
It does. And that scale is vital because it shows not just which motives are present, but how intensely they pull the individual.
Right.
A score of +1.5 in order means the person has an intense, almost desperate need for structure and rules to feel safe.
Got it.
But a score of -1.5 in order doesn't mean they are broken. It means they have an intense, driving need for flexibility, spontaneity, and a lack of constraint. The negative score is a feature, not a bug.
You know, as I'm looking at how Davis stacks these 3 frameworks together, it feels exactly like looking at the different layers of a house.
How do you mean?
Well, the Big Five, the ocean model, that feels like the concrete foundation and the structural framing.
Okay.
It's how the house is fundamentally built. You can't easily renovate your way out of being highly introverted. It's the concrete the house sits on. Then the Rice motives, the Laban's motive, that's the electricity and the plumbing.
I like that.
It's the hidden currents that power the house. It's the invisible energy that turns the lights on and makes the water flow.
And DISC.
DISC is the exterior architecture, the paint color, and the landscaping. It's how the house presents itself to the neighborhood.
Yeah.
It's how others see you behave when they walk by. You might have a massive, imposing front door like a dominant DISC profile, but your underlying Rice motives might show you are driven by a deep need for acceptance. The imposing door is just how you protect that need.
That is a brilliant synthesis, and it highlights exactly why Davis's methodology absolutely demands the combination of these specific frameworks.
Right, because if you only use DISC, as so many corporations do, you only see the exterior of the house.
Exactly. You might assume the manager with the dominant behavioral style is driven by a ruthless desire for power. But without the rice profile, you completely miss the fact that their core motive is actually a high need for family or social contact, and their dominance is just a mechanism to fiercely protect their team from outside threats.
If you only use one test, you inevitably create a flat stereotype.
Precisely. A single test boxes a human being into a category. A combination of tests creates a complex, multidimensional topography. By combining them, the mentor prevents the mentee from being reduced to a corporate label and instead gives them a high-definition mirror of their internal reality.
So understanding this internal core is incredible. We know the foundation, the plumbing, and the exterior. But mentoring, especially in the context of the agility of tomorrow that Davis discusses, requires taking this internal topography and actually applying it to the external world.
You don't work in a vacuum.
Right. You work with teams, you deal with corporate values, you have to execute projects. And that brings us to the final, deepest level of the diagnostic process.
Yes, level 3, deepening the profile. This is where the rubber meets the road. We take the house we just analyzed, and we see how it fits into a bustling, chaotic city. How does this specific avatar interact with other avatars to get things done?
What are the tools deployed in level 3?
First, we look at team roles using Meredith Belbin's 9 team roles framework. This identifies where the mentee naturally fits in a group dynamic based on their underlying stats.
Okay.
Belbin argues that a successful team needs a balance of different roles: action-oriented roles, people-oriented roles, and thought-oriented roles.
Right. So, like, are they a coordinator who naturally delegates? Are they a shaper who thrives on pressure and drives the team forward? Are they a plant who generates highly original ideas, or a completer finisher who obsesses over the final details and finds every typo?
Exactly. And understanding this is vital for preventing systemic team friction. Imagine you are building a task force for a critical new product launch. If you don't know the avatars of your team, you might accidentally assign 3 shapers to lead it.
Oh, that would be a complete nightmare.
That would be chaos.
3 highly driven, competitive individuals all fighting for the steering wheel. Nothing would get done because they'd be entirely focused on asserting control over each other.
Or, conversely, you build a team entirely of plants. You will have a whiteboard full of the most brilliant, paradigm-shifting ideas in the industry and absolutely zero execution because no one on the team is wired to actually finish the tasks.
Right, the completer finisher is missing.
Exactly. Belbin's roles map the mentee's utility to the group. Next, the mentor guides the mentee through a rigorous values definition.
Now, values are tricky. Every company has a poster in the break room with words like integrity and innovation, but they rarely mean anything in practice.
Yeah.
How does this methodology handle values?
It uses the big value list, which originally comes from Management 3.0 by Jürgen Appelo. But the source text notes Stephen A. Davis has personally expanded it based on his years of mentoring experience.
Okay.
The mentee is presented with this massive list of values and is tasked with selecting their absolute top 5 core values. But they can't just pick 5. They must rank them from highest to lowest.
Ranking them is where the actual work happens.
Yes, it forces the issue.
Because it's easy to say you value honesty and you also value financial success. But what happens when you are in a negotiation and telling the truth will cost you the deal? Which value wins the tiebreaker? Forcing a ranking makes the mentee confront their true operating principles.
It forces ultimate clarity. And once values are defined, we come to what the source material suggests might be the most challenging and transformative part of Level 3, the 360-degree view of traits.
This part of the text really jumped out at me. The mentee must select exactly 5 positive traits and exactly 5 negative traits to describe themselves.
Right.
And then they have to define how they believe the outside world perceives them, again using exactly 5 positive and 5 negative traits.
It is a highly constrained exercise, which is what makes it so potent.
But I have to push back on the framing here.
Go for it.
Exactly 5 negative traits. Isn't forcing someone to pick exactly 5 negative traits a bit harsh?
It sounds, yeah.
Think about a mentee who is already dealing with severe imposter syndrome, or who has low self-confidence because of a recent failure. Why force them to formally label themselves negatively? Doesn't that just reinforce their insecurities?
It sounds incredibly harsh on the surface, yes. But the source text offers a profound psychological reframe.
Okay.
In Davis's framework, the philosophy is that weaknesses can also be strengths and vice versa. Acknowledging negative traits like being impatient or overly perfectionistic or hesitant to make decisions is absolutely crucial for a true 360-degree view. It systematically strips away the ego.
So it's not about punishing yourself or dwelling on your failures. It's about accurately mapping your vulnerabilities so they don't catch you by surprise.
Precisely. The text actually uses a brilliant phrase: developing new seelische Muskeln, spiritual or emotional muscles.
Spiritual muscles. I like that.
Think about physical training. You cannot induce muscle hypertrophy, you cannot grow stronger, unless you are willing to subject the muscle to stress and admit where it is currently weak. You have to tear the fiber to rebuild it. If you refuse to admit you have a weak psychological muscle, you can never train it.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
If I know that I am inherently impatient, if I own that as one of my 5 negative traits on my avatar, I can actually build systems to mitigate it.
Exactly.
I can tell my team, hey, my baseline is impatience. If I seem like I'm rushing you, call me out on it. It allows for genuine leadership development because you finally stop wasting massive amounts of energy pretending you are flawless.
The pretense of perfection is exhausting. Owning the negative traits is liberating. The sources also mention that at this level, a mentor might bring in optional enhancements, like the MBTI, the 16 personalities test, or the Gallup-Clifton Strengths Finder to identify very distinct natural talents. But these are additions. The core is the 360-degree view.
Okay, let's take a breath and look at what we've built here.
It's a lot.
It is. At this point in the process, the personality avatar is fully constructed. We have the level 0 baseline, checking for burnout. We have the level 1 interface mapping time and learning styles.
Right.
We have the level 2 core wiring from the big 5, DISC and Rice motives. And we have the level 3 application into Belvin team roles, core values, and the stark reality of our 5 negative traits.
The complete picture.
Rainer Zufall's character sheet is complete. The stats are rolled. But what does the mentee actually do with this document? It can't just go in a drawer.
If it goes in a drawer, the entire process was a waste of time. Data without reflection is just trivia.
Right.
The sources emphasize heavily that the real magic, the actual behavioral change, happens through continuous systematic reflection. The avatar is a living document. You use it to navigate reality and to deliberately train those seelische Muskeln in the liminal spaces between your formal mentoring sessions.
And the sources provide a very specific structural tool for this continuous reflection, don't they? The Johari window.
They do. The Johari window, which was developed by psychologists Joseph Luft and Harrington Ingham, is a brilliantly simple but devastatingly effective framework for comparing your self-image with your public image. It divides your total self-awareness into 4 distinct panes.
So if I'm thinking about this, like adjusting the mirrors in my car to make sure I can safely merge on the highway, how do these 4 panes work?
Pane 1 is the open area. This is what I know about myself and what others also know about me. It's out in the open.
Give me an example.
For example, I know I'm a perfectionist, and my team definitely knows it because I color code every shared spreadsheet. There is no friction here because the internal and external realities match perfectly.
Okay, so that's what I can see clearly out the windshield. What's the next pane?
Pane 2 is the hidden area. What do I know about myself that I actively hide from others? These are my secret fears, my unstated ambitions, or maybe a core Rice motive that I feel is socially unacceptable to express at work.
Like masking the fact that you were deeply overwhelmed, projecting confidence while internally panicking.
Exactly. And the energy required to maintain that hidden area is massive. Then we have pane 3, the blind spot. This is the danger zone.
The blind spot.
Yes. What do others see in me that I'm completely blind to?
Let's give a corporate example of this, because I think everyone has worked with a manager who has a massive blind spot.
Oh, easily. Consider a leader whose DISC profile shows extremely high dominance, but they view themselves as highly collaborative. They think they are leading dynamic, open brainstorming sessions.
Right, they think you're being a great facilitator.
But their team experiences those sessions as dictatorial interrogations where only the manager's ideas win. The manager is blind to their true impact.
They think they're being collegial, but the team thinks they are a tyrant. If you don't shrink that blind spot, you are going to crash your career into someone else's.
Yeah.
And what is the final pain?
Pane 4 is the unknown. This is the subconscious, what remains hidden to everyone, even myself. These are untapped potentials or deep-seated behavioral triggers that haven't surfaced yet because the specific situation hasn't occurred to activate them.
So the goal of systematic reflection with the mentor is to constantly expand pane 1, the open area, by shrinking the other panes.
Exactly.
You shrink the hidden area by being more transparent and vulnerable with your team, and you shrink the blind spot by actively seeking out and absorbing critical feedback.
Precisely. Now, it's important to note that the text does mention standard goal-setting frameworks to aid this reflection. It references WOOP, which stands for Wish, Outcome, Obstacle, Plan, and the ubiquitous SMART goals.
SMART goals everywhere.
But, and this is a critical nuance, Davis's methodology includes a severe caveat about relying on these acronyms.
Oh, this part of the reading was fascinating. The caveat about acronyms as ballast.
Yes. The text points out that when a mentee is under immense psychological pressure, when they are overwhelmed or losing their mental bearing, standard corporate acronyms like WHOOP or SMART can suddenly become additional ballast. They feel like a burden rather than a life raft.
It is so true. If I am stressed out of my mind because a project is failing and my team is fighting and my mentor tells me, well, let's make sure your goal to fix this is specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound, I don't feel helped.
You feel annoyed?
I feel patronized. I feel like I've just been given corporate homework while my professional house is actively on fire.
It shows a lack of systemic empathy. The source emphasizes that methods and frameworks work best when they are functionally invisible to the mentee. The mentor shouldn't hit the mentee over the head with the structural schematic. They should fluidly guide them through it via conversation.
Right.
And to facilitate that, the texts provide a list of incredibly provocative, paradigm-shifting reflection questions.
Yes, these questions are fantastic because they don't sound like corporate speak.
Yeah.
Let me pull a few directly from the text. The mentor looks at the mentee's avatar and asks, where are you still trying to make yourself fit in?
Stop and think about the psychological weight of that question. Where are you trying to make yourself fit in? It implies that fitting in is an active, energy-draining choice, and often a detrimental one, rather than a necessity.
It really does.
It asks the mentee to identify where they are ignoring their avatar's true stats just to conform to a company culture that might actually be toxic to them.
Here's another one.
Yeah.
Which of your abilities have been underestimated?
That's a great one.
And my personal favorite, which I think cuts right to the core of everything we've talked about. What changes when you stop hiding your way of thinking?
That last question strikes directly at the heart of the hidden area in the Johari window. If your avatar shows you have a highly nonlinear, kinesthetic way of processing complex problems, but you've spent 10 years pretending to be a linear, spreadsheet-driven thinker to appease your bosses.
What happens if you stop hiding?
Exactly. What could you actually achieve with all that reclaimed psychological energy?
It's a terrifying but exhilarating question. But look, here is the practical reality. This level of intense, continuous reflection is heavy.
It is very heavy.
It requires a constant sounding board. You need someone to bounce these messy, half-formed thoughts off of as you try to shrink your blind spots. But a human mentor, no matter how dedicated, no matter how perfectly they execute the ACR cycle, is not always available.
They're just not. They have lives.
They sleep. They have their own jobs. You can't call them at 2 a.m. on a Tuesday when you're having an existential crisis about a product launch.
And this exact limitation leads us to what is arguably the most fascinating, forward-looking evolution in the source material we are reviewing, the introduction of the AI mentor.
Oren. Okay, let's unpack this completely. What exactly is Oren within the context of Stephen A. Davis's methodology?
Oren is described in the texts as an AI-based systemic mentor. On a technical level, it is a custom GPT built on OpenAI's foundational models.
Right.
But conceptually, it is far more ambitious.
How so?
It is designed to intricately combine systemic coaching philosophy, modern leadership principles, organizational logic, and the core tenets of personality development into a single, highly available digital sparring partner.
Now, the text uses a very specific, highly provocative phrase to describe Oren. It calls it an empathic AI.
Yes, empathic AI.
Now, I have to be highly skeptical here. I am pushing back hard on this. How can an algorithm be empathic? It is literally lines of code running on a server farm. It doesn't have a heartbeat. It doesn't have a nervous system. It has zero lived human experience. Isn't empathic AI just a slick marketing term for a glorified chatbot that is programmed to say, I understand how you feel, before generating a bulleted list of generic advice.
It is a completely valid skepticism, and frankly, it's the exact reaction most professionals have when they hear the term. But the source material actually anticipates this precise critique.
Oh, it does?
Yes. The text makes a massive fundamental distinction about what empathy means in a systemic context. It states explicitly that Oren is not trying to be human, and it does not attempt to simulate a romanticized emotional relationship with the user.
So if it's not faking human emotion, where does the empathy supposedly come from?
The empathy comes from its architectural depth and its restraint, not from cosmetic surface features. It isn't programmed to simulate pity. It is programmed deeply with Davis's systemic ethical stance, the ACR cycle we discussed earlier.
Okay.
It is engineered to recognize the structural patterns of human overwhelm.
What does that actually mean in practice, though? How does a prompt structure manifest as empathy?
The text explains that Oren acts as an orientation space rather than just a box of tools. Let me quote a specific line from the source that I think beautifully captures this design philosophy. An AI that doesn't get louder when you get quieter inside.
Doesn't get louder when you get quieter inside. That is incredibly poetic for a tech manual.
It's profound. It means that if you approach the AI in a state of deep confusion, stress, or vulnerability, it is explicitly prompted not to bombard you with enthusiastic solutions, 10-step plans, or whoop-pee frameworks.
It doesn't throw acronyms at you.
Right. It recognizes your cognitive load is maxed out, it lowers its output velocity, it creates a protected, quiet space to spar with your thoughts.
Right, the text says, manche Gedanken brauchen einen Raum ohne Publikum. Some thoughts need a space without an audience.
Exactly. When you are a senior leader, you often cannot express doubt to your team without causing panic, and you can't express it to your boss without looking incompetent.
It's incredibly isolating.
It is. Oren provides a secure, zero-judgment environment where you can dump your messy, unrefined thoughts. And because it is built on systemic logic, it mirrors those thoughts back to you, helping you sort the chaos. It helps the mentee regain access to their own responsibility rather than the AI taking the responsibility away from them.
That is the crucial difference. A standard chatbot tries to solve the problem for you. It says, write me an email to fire this person. A systemic AI mentor helps you see the system so you can solve the problem yourself. It asks, what are the systemic consequences if you fire this person tomorrow?
Yes.
It is the Wortprinzip, the consequence and compass, and the Einflussformel mathematically coded into the AI's response parameters.
Yeah. Precisely. It enforces the mentor stance digitally. And here is where the entire methodology loops back on itself in the ultimate synergy.
Oh, I know where you're going with this.
That personality avatar, the persona stack brief we spent levels 0 through 3 meticulously building, that data can be loaded directly into the Oren system.
So you aren't just talking to a generic, one-size-fits-all leadership bot. You are talking to an intelligence that has effectively read your entire psychological dossier.
Yes. The AI can spar with you based on your specific, validated cognitive wiring. If our fictional mentee, Rainer Zufall, goes to RN at 2 a.m. because a project is failing, RN knows the context.
It knows he's Rainer.
The AI knows that Rainer is a Kerberos who hates interruptions. It knows his Big Five scores, it knows his disk key profile is highly conscientious, and it knows his rice motives.
So instead of giving Rainer generic advice to just go talk to the team, Oren will tailor its reflective questions to challenge Rainer's specific known blind spots. It might ask Rainer, your avatar shows you have a deep need for order and a tendency toward perfectionism. Is this project actually failing, or is it just operating outside of your preferred control structures?
That is exactly how it functions. It uses your own defined weaknesses and strengths to calibrate the mirror it holds up to you. It represents a massive evolution in how we can leverage technology. We are moving from using AI purely for productivity, writing code, summarizing PDFs, to using AI for actual nuanced self-reflection and personal development.
This has been an absolutely incredible journey through this material. The depth of Davis's framework is just staggering.
It is so thorough.
We started by defining the ethical foundation of systemic coaching, establishing that a true mentor is a mirror, not a mechanic. We explored how the ACR cycle forces accountability and how trust is mechanically built through those 9 crucial behaviors like discretion and reliability.
From there, we explored the meticulous construction of the personality avatar. We saw how it isn't just a single test, but a layered architecture. We started at level 0, checking the critical baseline for burnout and holistic balance to ensure the system was stable.
Right.
We mapped the daily interface in level 1 with time management and learning styles.
Then we went deep under the floorboards into the core wiring in level 2, stacking the big five, Dissy, and Rice motives to understand not just how someone behaves, but the invisible currents that drive them.
Yes.
And finally, in level 3, we applied all that data to the real world, mapping build and team roles, defining core values, and acknowledging the profound necessity of identifying our exact negative traits.
We saw how that compiled data demands continuous, systematic reflection to clear our blind spots within the Johari window, while being careful to avoid the trap of throwing useless acronyms at people who are already overwhelmed.
And we culminated with the integration of all this profound self-knowledge into Oren, this empathic AI that provides a digital zero-audience orientation space. It acts as a tireless sparring partner that doesn't get louder when we get quieter inside.
It's beautiful.
It is without a doubt the most wildly comprehensive approach to answering the fundamental question, who am I, that we have ever reviewed on this show.
It is a phenomenal synthesis of psychology and technology, but as we've seen, it demands rigorous, unflinching honesty from anyone brave enough to undertake it. You cannot hack this process.
I really can't. So, to you, the learner, listening to this deep dive right now, I want to leave you with a thought-provoking idea to mull over based on everything we've unpacked today.
I love this part.
Think about your own personality avatar for a moment. Picture your own character sheet. If you had to define your top 5 positive traits right now, you probably could do it pretty quickly. We're all trained to market our strengths. But if you were forced right this second to list exactly 5 negative traits, and I mean really own them, write them down, and share them with your colleagues, could you do it?
That's the real test.
And more importantly, how much vital energy are you wasting every single day trying to hide those negative traits instead of just owning them, admitting your weaknesses, and letting your team help you balance them out?
That is the real challenge of the mirror. It requires you to stop performing and start reflecting.
It does. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the architecture of self-awareness and the future of systemic mentoring. Until next time, start mapping your avatar, pay attention to your underlying stats, and whatever you do, don't be afraid to look in the mirror.